Risky video, this one. I suspect it'll be demonetised, but we'll give it a go. Why are there so many adult-type establishments on the A1? You must have seen them. Maybe you've even visited. I know I have. I mean, my friend has. But what's so special about the A1? Why are they there? Who's visiting? And do they make the A1 the seediest road/motorway in the country? Perhaps they do, and today we're going to talk about it whilst hopefully not upsetting the YouTube community guidelines. My name is John. Welcome to Auto Shenanigans. Why not consider subscribing?
Why are the sex shops next to the A1?
Today we've say 4.5 establishments to look at, which together give the A1 its sexy reputation. And it may not be a coincidence that these sort of places set themselves up at the roadside, and indeed the A1 isn't the only road where you'll find such adult stores. The A14, A57, A12 and A38, to name but a few, also have stores of their own. But the A1 is certainly the road with the highest concentration, and it'll be the main focus for today's video. The A1 or A1M is a mixed dual carriageway and motorway that runs for, lots of miles from London to Edinburgh, and our 5 establishments are spread-eagled across the A1 like so. We start not with an adult store as such, but instead a mysterious and perhaps ominous-looking building that sits alongside the A1 in Tempsford, Bedfordshire. It's known as the Anchor Inn or Anchor Hotel, where I'm sure a lot of anking goes on. The Anchor Inn first opened in the 1700s, located near to, but not on the same site as the Anchor Inn that we're looking at today. The original inn was sited alongside the Great North Road, aka the A1. However, the A1 was realigned in the 1800s, and its owner decided to build a new inn next to the now realigned road, thinking that if he didn't, his business would fail owing to the passing traffic doing just that. It opened in 1831, and it's still there today, but it's less of an inn and more of a members-only adult swing enthusiast club known as the Vanilla Alternative. I can't go into detail as to what may or may not go on there because I've the community guidelines to think about, but I'm sure you can work it out. Either way, I thought it was a good way to kick off our seedy tour of the A1. And we don't even need to go far for our next stop, which is only 1.5 miles south on the A1, where we've a handy petrol station and perhaps the most well-known adult store on the A1, the Happy Lovers Adult Store, suitable for other handy purposes. I won't be going into that much detail on the store simply because very little is known about it in terms of its origin, and looking through its company history, it seems to have been owned by many people. However, it's still there, and I think today it's considered as one of the most well-known landmarks on the A1, right up there with the Angel of the North and the hyperbolic paraboloid at Markham Moore Services. I'm not sure exactly as to how long the store has been operating, but what I do know is that the site first opened as a Happy Eater restaurant in the 1980s. If you're not familiar, Happy Eater was a roadside restaurant chain that was set up to compete with the famous Little Chef. And then in 1996, the Happy Eater became a Little Chef, so I guess they didn't compete all that well. That said, the Little Chef restaurant only lasted until 1998 before it was closed due to too many competing Little Chefs in the area. And I suppose a few years later, the Happy Lovers store was set up, although looking at Google Street View, it may have had a different name back then. Heading back up the A1, passing the Vanilla Alternative because I didn't think about the logistics properly, I've come to Sawtry, where we find Sawtry Services, and until a couple of years ago, some of you may have noticed an adult store at this location, but that's no longer the case. Sawtry Services first came about in the 1970s when a small garage and house was built alongside the A1. This was further developed in the 1980s, seeing a petrol station, hotel and a Happy Eater restaurant added, and at the time the site was known as Toll Bar Services. In the 90s, the A1 was turned into the A1M, featuring 4 lanes of motorway in each direction, resulting in the closure of the hotel and petrol station. But miraculously, the Happy Eater, now a Little Chef, survived owing to the road access being retained. The hotel could have perhaps stayed open, but the Highways Agency bought it via a compulsory purchase order so that they could build the A1M, meaning it was left abandoned instead. And after all was said and done, there was nothing but a lonely Little Chef left at Toll Bar Services, which finally bit the dust in 2007 with the building left abandoned alongside the hotel, which was then later taken over by Pulse and Cocktails, a company that today has 17 adult store locations across the UK. And it's probably these guys that have made the A1 famous for its adult establishments, one of which used to be located here at Sawtry, but they were turfed out by Moto, who wanted to build a service station. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because the site started as a services, was then abandoned and turned into something else, and now it's been reverted back into a services. But what is it about these roadside locations that make make them so appealing to companies like Pulse and Cocktails? Well, I emailed them to find out. This isn't the reply, it's just a blank piece of paper. And there's a few reasons as to why one might like to use an old roadside restaurant or services as an adult store, some of which are perhaps rather obvious, like the ease of access and parking. But these locations also offer a certain level of discretion. You're not exactly in the middle of your local high street, and since we're stuck-up English types, it would be far too embarrassing to be seen entering such a store. The other reason is timing. It's no coincidence that most of the locations we're looking at used to be Little Chef or Happy Eater restaurants. They went tits up and started closing in the mid to late 2000s, leaving many vacant properties available, which for an adult establishment were ideal for the reasons already mentioned, and I imagine they were cheap as well. But it turns out there is one overriding and very boring factor as to why these stores are located where they are. We'll come back to that later, because let's take a look at the next sexy shop stop. Where are you now, John? I'm on the A1 at Stoke Rochford Services, or what used to be a services between Colsterworth and Grantham. The northbound side has existed in one way, shape or form since the late 1920s, but the southbound side came later in the 1960s following an upgrade of the A1, turning it into a dual carriageway. At one point on either side there were petrol stations and branches of AJ's restaurant, which were very similar to Happy Eater restaurants on the basis that they were operated by the previous owners of the Happy Eater chain. The restaurants lasted all of a year before the owners sold them to not Little Chef but McDonald's. Who knew there were once two McDonald's located at Stoke Rochford? But these didn't last long either, with Macca's giving up on them after a matter of years, leaving the northbound building to be converted to a now abandoned meeting venue, and the southbound building sat abandoned for a couple of years before Pulse and Cocktails found it and opened their Grantham branch on the southbound A1. Like the other sites we've looked at, parking is easy and discreet, and since it's the only building that survives from the service station days, there's no one else around to bother you. Or is there? I mean, who else is coming to these sort of stores? In my mind, it's Dave, the long-haul truck driver, who's a bit bored on an overnight stay, but apparently that's not the case, and customers vary greatly from couples to singles, old people, some truck drivers, and it would seem that a lot more people visit these stores than we might think, and one of the reasons for that is very much their roadside location. I'm told that customers feel less exposed and are far more likely to stop in when compared to a shop found on the high street. And speaking of high street, why is that not the preferred location for a shop of this type? Well, now we're getting on to the boring but main reason as to why the A1 and other roads are home to these establishments, and it's down to licensing. Companies like Pulse and Cocktails, the main operator if you will, have licenses in place that allows them to sell certain ranges of products that you absolutely wouldn't be able to buy on the high street. The licenses are issued by local councils, and in order to get one, your business and store needs to fulfill a certain criteria. If these establishments were to try and set up near a school, housing, church, or even a high street store, they wouldn't get permission or a license. But what about Ann Summers and such like? They're high street stores, are they not? They are, but they're not the same. Those high street stores are effectively branded underwear stores that sell a few accessories. You're not able to pick up a copy of Lesbian Lavatory Lust 6 on DVD or a Rotary Thrustmaster 3000. They don't have the special licenses required to sell such items, whereas these roadside locations absolutely do. What I'm saying is if you want the real deal, you need to jump in the car and take a spin up the A1. Drive safe, mum. So the main reason as to why the A1 is home to these adult stores is because it's pretty much the only location where a council is going to allow you to operate such a business. The fact that it's discreet with easy access is a bonus. It's mainly the legal side of things that dictates where these stores are located, and it seems councils up and down the country think that the A1 is perfect for it. And yeah, fair enough. Many times have I driven on the A1 and needed to make a stop for some rubber imitation boobies. Probably get a pair whilst I'm here, actually. This is our final stop for today, Barnsdale Bar northbound services, which started out as Barnsdale Bar southbound services only, where we'd have used a footbridge to access the southbound side. In 1980, a Little Chef was added to the northbound side, which managed to survive until 2012, which is pretty good going for a Little Chef. However, it would seem that our appetite is clearly no longer in favour of the Olympic breakfast and rather something else. So, why are there so many of these establishments on the A1 and other main roads? Because licensing and convenience. Who's visiting them? Everyone. And does this make the A1 the seediest road and motorway in the country? Yes, almost certainly. But it's something to do. It breaks up what might otherwise be a fairly monotonous drive, and if nothing else, it might brighten up your fuel and coffee stop in ways that you never imagined possible. Over 18s only, though. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Why are the sex shops next to the A1? What is it about that road turns people on? Who's driving to Grand Theft